And it's day 14 of the R Advent Calendar. For today's lesson, we're going to talk about mutate. This is a great function in dplyr, and it lets you add a new variable or a column to your data. Now, it looks like this is a little bit out of order. I don't think we've loaded the tree data yet. I'm kind of doing all these live, right? So you may, if you're running through these yourself day to day, you might bump into the same problem. And so I think up until now we've only worked with the sleigh data, and it's jumped over to the tree data, but I think we're just going to try to roll with it. Because we can see in the folder there is a file called christmastrees.csv. So let's just make that something called tree.dat, and we're going to go back to our read.csv function and just read that in. And let's look at the top of that. Alright, so it looks like there's a few things. Looks like there may be a little typo in the top of that file as well that we might have to fix later on. But it looks like there's a type of tree, some kind of height, a fragrance rating, I imagine, some other factor called needle drop, and another factor called Christmas magic. Alright, so this is saying let's take that tree.dat and run a mutate on it to figure out how many needles are dropped per tree depending on its height. So we're going to walk through this function nice and slowly to make sure everybody's happy with it, because it is throwing a lot at us. There are a number of things. So first of all, we have this crazy operator with a percent greater than percent. This is called the pipe operator. And the pipe operator is usually easiest read as and then, if you're describing this in English. So what we're saying is take the tree.dat object and then mutate it. And in the mutate, we're going to make a new column called needles by height. That can be whatever you want it to be. It's just the name of what the new column is going to be. And it says we're going to take the needle drop divided by the height. Right? Let's just run that and we'll see what it looks like. So we run the whole thing, and we haven't assigned it to an object, so it just gets printed to the column or to the console. And now you can see we have this new column that's showing up on the right hand side called needles by height, which is the value of the drop, and for this first line that's 25 divided by the height, which in this case is 5.5, so the value comes out to be 4.5. Now dplyr is actually smart enough to understand that you're working on the tree.dat object, so you don't actually need this tree.dat $ stuff here either. Let's just delete that and run it again and see what happens, and we get the exact same answer. And so that makes it a little simpler. We're just saying the needles by height is equal to the needle drop divided by the height. Now, like I said, this is throwing quite a bit at you. It's also using this new syntax where it has the name of the package followed by a double colon and then the name of the function. This is useful when there's some sort of conflict between packages that have functions that are named the same. This will also just use that function even if you haven't loaded the package. So if we hadn't run library dplyr ahead of time, this would still work. Generally, I prefer to just load the package and then delete this section and just use it as it is. And again, you can see this is giving us the exact same answer as we've been getting all along. Okay, whew, that was a big one. So it kind of goes into this a little bit more in the instructions. It says we're using the pipe. Right, and I didn't even read this ahead of time, and we're describing it exactly the same way. Do this and then do that, and that's right. Now, in this case, it has not actually saved anything back to a CSV file. And that's important, actually, for data integrity. It means that you're not going to overwrite your results. But let's say you did want to save that value out to a CSV file. You're going to use a couple of commands. let's copy and paste, and then we'll walk through them. And again, I like to add spaces. And again, I don't like to have all of this $ business in here if we don't need it. It just makes the code a little easier to read, easier to understand. So here we're going to take this same thing we did up here, and we're just going to assign it to an object called newTree.dat. My environment's getting a little bit busy, but you can see it shows up here. It's got 30 observations with 6 variables. And then we need to write that to a CSV. We've got the same, well, we've got a couple of little bugs here in the write.csv line. But anyway, so write.csv is the function we're going to use to write this out. The object we want to write is that newTree.dat object that we just created on the line above. And then we give it this argument file equals, and the name of the file we'd like to create, again, in quotation marks, and just make sure that your quotes are where they need to be. So in this case, it'll make a new file, tree.data2.csv. Let's run that. And it doesn't look like much happened, but if we look over here in our files pane at the very bottom now, we have this thing called tree.data2.csv. And I think if we just click that, we can go to view file in RStudio, and it will open itself up, and it shows us what that CSV looks like. It's a little hard to read, but you can see that on the right hand side here we have that value for needles by height that we calculated. Alright, so day 14 is a doozy. There was a lot going on there. We sort of had a new data set that we hadn't seen before, a few different things with the pipe and everything else. We're going to keep using this as the days go on in this Advent calendar. So if you found today a little bit confusing, I really encourage you to stick with it. It'll all become second nature in no time. You've already made it this far. Hang with it. We'll be there to the end in no time. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, talk to you tomorrow.